Forms is a fast and efficient Google app that allows for data collection. It's utilized in schools for many different things, from creating self-grading quizzes for formative assessments in the classroom, all the way to collecting observational data on students. In this video, I'm going to show you a quick how-to on how to get started with building a basic Google form for data collection purposes. Okay, let's get started building our first Google form. So the first step is to go to your My Drive. And the reason why I say go to your My Drive is because let's say you get interrupted mid-workflow and you can't get back to it for a day or two. That way you know where it is. So what I did is I went to my app waffle and I went to my drive. And now on the left-hand side, I'm going to select my Drive, and I'm going to choose the folder that I want to put this in. So maybe it's in Instructional Tech, and then maybe inside of Instructional Tech, I want to put it in my YouTube videos here. So you can see I'm in the folder I want it in. Now on the left-hand side, I'm going to click New to create a new Google form, and I'm going to select Google Forms. This is going to open a new tab or a new window here, and that's going to start my Google form. So you can see it's currently an untitled form, and it doesn't start saving until you give it a form name or a title to the form. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm just going to call it Example Google Form. And that will be the title, or that will be the name of it in my Google Drive. And you can see that it also changes it down here in the title. This title at the top is the title that you search it for, or it's saved in your Google Drive as. This title at the bottom is what people see when they fill out the Google form. So now you have two different, across the top here you've got quite a few different options. We'll go into some of those in a minute here. But you've got two different options here for your sub-menus here. The first is questions, which allows you to edit the questions and the look of the form or the survey. And the second is responses, and that's where you're going to be able to view what people say. As we come down, you can see I've got a question here, and my question's in a little box. And at the top of the box, I've got this where if I put it over top of it, it gives me the crosshairs. On the right-hand side, you can see I've got my tool to add elements to my Google form. So if I want to add another question, I can click over here, Add Question, and it adds a second question to my Google form. I'll just call this Q2. I could also import a question from another Google form. I could add a title or a description, so I could add another title at some point if I wanted to. I can add images, YouTube videos, and then you can actually, if you want to, and then the last option down here is to add a section. So you can actually section off your Google form. This is particularly useful if you have a longer survey, because then it'll ask the person to click the next button and it'll take them to the next section. Alright, so let's talk about how do we add questions and how do we edit them and make them so that they do what we need them to do. To add a question, again, over here on the right hand side, we're just going to click Add a Question. So the first text field here is pretty much the directions for the question. So let's say I want to ask my person I'm surveying, who is the best basketball player? I'm going to put a question mark there. So then the next step over, I can add an image. So if I wanted to click on this and, I can go search Google image search, and then I could type in like basketball. And let's say, oh, that's perfect. Let's add that one in, that image into the question. So it'll add a little picture of a basketball into the question. Then you've got a few options for how you move it around. So I'm going to center align my basketball, and we'll make it a lot smaller because it's way too big. There. So I did that by the image here. That adds an image to the question. Then to the right this is probably the most important part of creating a question is how do I want my person that I'm surveying to respond? So when you click on that box, you've got a lot of different options here. Most of them are self-explanatory. A few tips, multiple choice, and checkboxes are actually different because in multiple choice, the person can only respond with one choice. In checkboxes, they can select as many of the choices as they need to. So you might say, pick all of the foods that you would eat at today's meeting. And they could do the checkboxes and they could pick all of them. Or maybe I say, pick your favorite food. where I only want them to pick one, then I would use multiple choice so they can only pick one. File uploads are nice for like, it's kind of like a Dropbox. And then at the bottom, date and time will bring up little graphics so that they can pick, you can see a calendar and pick, well, it was last week Monday, I don't remember what the date was. It'll pull up a calendar and they can click on that. So now as we move down below the image here are the options that they can select. So I did a multiple choice, so they're going to be able to pick one. And now I can start typing in names. So let's say my first person is Chad Riffle. And then I can actually add another option by either clicking add option right here, which will allow me to do it. So now maybe I type in Michael Jordan. Another option you have is to just hit the enter key. That'll add another option for you. So maybe for this one I type in LeBron James. And let's say I want to allow my person being surveyed the freedom to choose any person they want as a fourth option. I could do this add other, which then when the person filling out the survey, let's take a look at it here and I'll show you. When the person filling out the survey gets the question, who's the best basketball player, there's my image, there's the people, and then this last one, other, they actually can type in for the other. So if they wanted to do like Dennis Rodman, they could type it in under other and submit it that way. So that's the basics of how you create a multiple choice question here and make it available. Let's say I want to take this other off, so I don't want them to be able to type their own in. I can actually click this X, which will remove it. If I wanted to, let's say I wanted to add a picture of LeBron James, I could click add image here, and then I get all my options again, go to Google image search, and I could type in LeBron James. Google will bring up a ton of pictures of him. And we'll say this one. So I pick one and click insert. And now for that option, they're going to get this little image down here for each question you could do this. So if I want to do the same thing for Michael Jordan here. Where I've seen this utilized in schools is, if you're asking questions about like how are you feeling to a student, it might help to have little images in here, like some visual cues to help them. If you're, asking a question, I mean, it can be used in a multitude of ways to adding images in. Just remember it makes the survey quite a bit longer having images added. So now maybe I'm ready for my next question. I can come over to the right, click add question. Can add as many questions as I need to here. Just remember you're asking somebody to use their time to complete it. So I like to try and keep it below 10 questions if I'm doing a survey. All right, so let's say you've got all your questions in, you've got all set up so that it's getting responses the way you want, you've double checked everything. Now you want to run through and view your Google form as a participant to see what it's going to look like to the person you send it to. Up here at the top, this little eyeball, this preview eyeball, I actually used it earlier in the video. If I click on that, it's going to show me exactly what this is going to look like to the participants who are filling out my survey. Now I can go through and practice filling it out as a participant. Check my spelling, check to make sure everything looks the way I want it to look, and then come down and I'm just actually going to submit this. Now that I've submitted it, it's given me the, the whole it's been recorded, submit another response. Now I'm going to close this tab because it actually opened the preview in a new tab. So I'm going to close this tab, which takes me back to my editor. And you can see at the top here now in responses, I've got one new response. So I'm going to click on response because I want to see what that looks like. I like to fill this out a few times before I send it out. Go to the responses and look over my questions to see if they're collecting the data in an organized way so that I can get my visualizations. So there are 3 different ways you can look at your results within Google Forms. The first is as a summary of all of the responses for each question. This is typically how we use this. But let's say you have a specific question that you want to dig deeper into. You can look at the responses to a specific question. And then let's say you want to go to a specific response and see what that person put for each individual question. You can view it by the individual with the third option over here. There are ways, let's say it's not doing it the way you want and you've tried some things, you can get really fancy in the future with this because you can actually create a spreadsheet of all of the data from your Google form and use Google Sheets to build data visualizations. And really at that point, everything, your visualizations become endless, what you're able to do. There are a couple other options here that are really helpful when you're using Google Forms, when you first start using Google Forms. The first is you can turn it off so it's no longer accepting responses. So if you have a due date or something, you can just come in and click that. And the next one is under this three little dots. I often call them the snowman here. And under this three little dots, when you open it up, you've got the option to click on get email notifications for new responses. This is really super useful if this is something you're going to put out there and maybe, hey, fill this out if you have a student you want to refer for our student success team. And then when they fill it out, maybe it might be 6 months after you create the form. You want to know that day so you can go in and start the process. You can click this to turn it on, and then all of a sudden you'll get an email anytime someone fills out your Google form. You'll get an email that says so and so filled out your Google form. Click here to view their responses. Now let's say I did my preview, everything looks good. However, I want to customize the way my form looks. I don't want it to be this purple that almost every Google form people sends out are. So I can come into this customize theme. I can choose an image for my header, or I can actually just change the background color to a color that I like. And I can change the font size to maybe a more formal font size. Once I got it the way I want it to look, I know that it's collecting data in a way that I can organize it and aggregate it so I have it the way I want it. Now I'm ready to send it to my recipients. So to send your Google form, you click on the send button. Before we do that though, I do want to bring up one quick thing. We have a lot of problems with this where I work, where if you're working across domains, so if you're working with people that have a different end to their email address than you do, there is a by default selected option that causes people to not be able to fill out your Google form. So what we're going to do is under the settings gear here, or cog, or whatever this thing is, when you click on that, you're going to see under general that it's got sign in, require sign in, restrict to users in educational text. Yours will say restrict to users in whatever your domain is and its trusted organizations. If you want people to be able to fill it out who have emails different than your own, so my email is at k12eta.org. Let's say I was sending it to a teacher in Ludington to fill out my survey, which is at lasd.net. They're not going to be able to fill it out if this box is selected. So you want to turn this off. That's an important part. Turn that off if you're sending it to people outside of your domain. It's a nice feature for if you want it to only be filled out by people that work in your same domain as you, but it can cause problems. So I'm going to turn that off now. Now I'm ready to share it to my people that I want it to fill it out. So to share it, I'm going to click the send button in the top right corner, and I could just type in their email addresses, and I could do it by name. If I wanted to email it to one of my coworkers, I can start who's saved in my inbox or in my contacts. I can type in their name and it'll pop up. I could do it by email address. If I wanted to send it to somebody who has by their email address, I can type in their email address. And this is nice for if you want to send it to just a few people to fill it out. You want to know that they opened it and filled it out. You want confirmation that they completed it. That's where emails are nice. My favorite way to share a Google form is with a link. So the next option over, you got the mail and then the link. This link right here, anybody who clicks on it is going to be sent to fill out the form. So if I click on copy here and I open a new tab in my window here, then I right click, paste, and hit enter, it takes me to my Google form to complete it, to fill it out. This is nice. You could put this in an email to a large group of people. You could put a link to it on a website. You could put it in if you have a how-to document, you could put a link to it in the how-to document. There's a lot of different ways you could use this. I even put them in calendar invites. So let's say we're going to have a meeting and I have some questions about, to help prepare for the meeting before we get there. I could create a Google form, put this link into the calendar invite so that the people who are invited to the calendar event can click on the link and edit it. So now you have the basics. You can create a form. You can add some questions to it. You can view the responses after people fill it out. And you can send it out to be completed. All right, have fun collecting data. Thanks for watching.